Yes, sir.
We're learning Tanya for the 6th day of Shvat, page 81 in the Chayenu, and we're holding Likuti Amarim. It's chapter 20. In today's lesson, consider the insignificance of the one spoken word relative to the power of speech itself. Imagine how much we speak. We can speak and speak and speak. We can go on and on and on.
Never stop.
What about the power of speech? What is the comparison between the ability of speaking to the power of speech? The power of speech is so much greater than the ability of speaking.
Comes out from the heart.
Because you can speak and speak and speak. Right. That was the chiddush that the rabbi said on Shabbos. He said that J.J. Hecht once went to the Frierdiker Rebbe and he asked him, they appointed him to be a big rabbi in a big shul. And the shul was, he was a young guy, a big rabbonim there, a big oilum. So he asked the Frierdiker Rebbe for advice how he should handle the shul. So the Rebbe Rashab told him, you should speak, read and read and read, right? That's how he said. You should speak and speak and speak and speak, and maybe the emes will come out one day. So speaking, but the power of speech itself is so much more than the actual speech. It's the ability to speak. So, or thought, and how much more so relative to the soul itself. Now, thought is obviously higher than speech, and the soul is obviously higher than all of it together. Thought and speech, the world came into being through God's speech. So, the world came into being through Hashem's speech. Hence, its comparative nothingness relative to God's being. What is the chashivus of a world in comparison to Hashem? Nothingness. What is the chashivus of a world in comparison to Hashem? I say it all the time. If you were able to build a home by speech, you say, I want to have a home, and a home comes, and a home immediately is being built, you would know, you wouldn't have any importance. It would be something that is insignificant to you, because you can create another one. 2 seconds later, you create another home, another home, another home. To illustrate from the soul of human being, when a man utters a word, this single word is an absolutely nothing when compared only to his articulate soul, the power of speech as a whole. Which is the soul's middle garment, because we have thought, speech, and action. So speech is the middle garment. Organ of expression, namely its faculty of speech. The soul has 3 garments, thought, speech, and action, of which speech is the middle one, with action being lower than speech and thought higher than speech. One word has no value even in comparison with this faculty, the faculty of speech. Since this faculty can produce an infinite number of words, and next to infinity, one word has no value whatsoever. In actual practice, there is a limit to the number of words one can speak. However, this is only because the physical organs involved in speech have a limited functional ability. The soul's capacity for speech is limitless. So there's 2 types of speech. There's the soul speaking, and there's the actual mouth speaking. So mouth is speaking is limited. Even it's close to infinite, because you can speak non-stop. But the soul's capacity of speech is limitless. Surely then, this word has no value when compared to the soul's innermost garment. That garment which is the closest to the soul itself, namely its faculty of thought, which is the source of speech and life, and its life force. You want to know what a person is thinking, listen to what he speaks about. He speaks about certain subject. It shows that his mind is occupied with that subject. So our diburim, our speech, are generated from our thought. You can't speak without thinking. So since thought is higher and closer to the soul than is speech, this one word surely has no value in comparison with it. It goes without saying that this word is as naught when compared with the essence and ability as opposed to the garment of the soul, this being its 10 attributes mentioned above, Chochma, Bina, Das, and so on, the 7 emotional attributes, from which are derived the letters of thought that are closed in one's speech when it is uttered. Since all of men's thought are either of an intellectual or an emotional nature, they derive from the soul's intellectual or emotional faculties. When one speaks, the letters of his thought descend to a lower level. For thought, too, like speech, consists of letters, except that letters of thought are more spiritual and refined. Thought and speech share a common characteristic. But these 10 attributes, Chochma, Bina, Das, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, and so on, are the root and source of thought, and before being closed in the garment of thought, they as yet lack the element of letters. So if you look at the 10 Sephiros, you start from Chochma all the way to Malchus. Once you pass the 10 Sephiros, you have Machshava, Dibur, U'Maisa, thought, speech, and action. The letters are formed only when one applies his thought to a particular idea or a feeling, as explained further. Since the intellectual and emotional soul powers are so subtle and amorphous that they cannot be defined even in terms of the spiritual thought or the spiritual thought letters, they are obviously of an altogether different, more spiritual order than thought, and the spoken word is surely without value in comparison to them. What follows is a description of the process whereby the letters of thought are formed. למשל, כשנאפלת איזו אהבה בחמדו בליבו של אדם. קודם שאלו מהלב אל המוח לחשו ולהר בו, אין בו בחינת סייסיוס עדיין, רק חפץ, פשוט וחשיקו בלב, ולדובר או נחמד אצלי. For example, when a man suddenly becomes conscious of a certain love or desire in his heart, before it has reason from the heart to the brain to meditate on it and to ponder it, it has not yet acquired the element of letters. It is only a pure desire and longing for the object or of his affection. Although the more so before he began to feel in his heart a craving and desire for that thing, when it was yet confined within the realm of his intellect, chokhmah, understanding corresponding to bina and knowledge, meaning that the thing was known to him to be desirable and gratifying, something good and pleasant to attain and to cling to, as for instance to study a certain discipline or to eat some delicacy. In this state of intellectual appreciation of the desirable object, before the appreciation has even developed into an emotion, there are certainly no letters present in one's mind. Only after the desire and craving have already descended into his heart, after they have developed into emotions through the stimulus of his wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, ואחר כך חוזר ועושה מהלב למח לך שהוא להר בו איך להציע תאבוסי מכוח אל הפועל להשיג המייכול או למיד השחוכמה בפועל. And only after they have ascended once again from the heart back to the brain to think and meditate on how to implement his desire by actually obtaining that food or actually studying that subject. It is only at this point when one applies his thought to implement his desires that letters are born in one's mind corresponding to the language of each of the nations who employ these letters when speaking and thinking about everything in the world. So each of us thinks in his own language. Pure feeling, however, feeling that has not yet reached the applied implemental stage of thought, transcends differences of nation and language, since it does not express itself in letters. From all this, we may understand the Alter Rebbe's earlier statement that a spoken word is utterly without value in comparison with the soul's intellectual and emotional powers, which are described here for our purposes as the essence of the soul. Surely then the divine word by which God creates and animates all the worlds has no value at all next to Hashem, who is truly absolutely infinite. All the worlds created and sustained by the divine word are as if non-existent from Hashem's perspective, and their presence does not affect any change in his unity. This theme will be further discussed in the following chapter. So to take away from today's Tanya, the material world's significance in relation to God can be loosely compared to a single sound that a person makes in relation to his inner emotional and intellectual consciousness. With that, we're going to page 166. The lessons of nature and history. Vayomer Moshe, Gam ato titen beyodeinu zvachim ba'elos v'asun la'Hashem lekim. Let me just give you a little background. Paro comes to Moshe after the plague of darkness, and he says, you know what? Before I said that the boys, the little kids, the women should stay here, and you, the men, you're saying you need to pray to Hashem in the desert. So take the men and go and leave the women and children. So Moshe didn't agree, so he sent them away. Now he's dealing with the plague of darkness, so he calls Moshe again and he says, you can go. Take the women, take the children.
Just get out of here.
Just leave the animals. Don't take the animals. So Moshe's unbelievable answer. Moshe says to him, not only that we are going to take our animals and we're not going to leave even one animal over here, you are going to give us your animals also, because we don't know how much God is going to ask of us, how much offerings we're going to need. So it says, Vayemer Moshe, Gam ato, you, Paro, Titen be'odeinu zvachim v'elos v'asun Hashem leikeinu. It's not enough what we have. So not only that we're not going to leave anything, we're going to take from you. Right? But that's an unbelievable audacity from Moshe. He's like standing before Paro, and imagine what aggressive negotiation. Not only we're taking, we're going to take yours.
Yeah.
Moshe said, you will even provide us with feast offerings and ascent offerings, so that we may offer them up to God, our God. So allegorically, Moshe was saying that the Jewish people's own spiritual resources are not sufficient. Moshe is telling them, what we have is not enough. We need to take also what the Goyim have in order to serve Hashem. In order to serve God fully, we must sometimes also make use of resources taken from the world at large. The Torah itself, before listing the commandments that Hashem requires us to obey, describes the creation of the world. We start from Bereshit. The Torah tells us, seemingly the Torah is a book of instructions. It tells us what to do. Hoira, instructing us what to do. So why does the Torah start with stories? Bereshis bo Elokim, He created this. Tell me what I need to do. Why you tell me stories? Why are you starting with the story of creation? So the Torah describes the creation of the world and the world events that led to the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. The Torah tells us how we got to Matan Torah. This is because there are lessons in proper conduct and in our relationship with God that we need to learn from observing nature and human history. We have to observe nature and also the lessons from human history. As the Baal Shem Tov put it, a lesson is how to fulfill our divine mission can be learned from everything that divine providence arranges for us to see. So whatever it is that Hashem is putting in your vicinity, in your surroundings,
It's for you to see and learn. Yeah.
is to learn from everything that you see. Every Hashgacha Pratis says too, every divine providence you teach us something. Bruchim Tiyum.
Go ahead.
Yeah.